Just wanted the choir to be.
Okay.
Yeah. The meeting is being called to order.
Well, it may be almost 5 hours after the scheduled time, but the plenary where the African Union heads of state are about to formally meet is now about to begin. Well, without much ado, let's go right where the plenary session is about to start.
Oh.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, distingués invités, une fois de plus, nous avons le temps contre nous. Nous avons reçu un programme avec les différents orateurs. Je vais directement les appeler à tour de rôle. It's my honor to invite His Excellency President Jacob Zuma for his opening speech, his welcome speech.
Your Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union, President Robert Mugabe, Your Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Heads of Delegations, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to South Africa. Your Excellencies, this year marks 15 years since the adoption of perhaps one of the most important instruments for not only our organization but also our peoples, the Constitutive Act of the African Union. The Act, amongst others, also acknowledges our impediments to the continent's socio-economic development. Since the adoption of the Constitutive Act, Africa has taken its destiny, specifically its socio-economic development and integration, in its own hands. Africa is thus on a new path of development and growth that will enable it to take its rightful place in global affairs. In this regard, we wish to congratulate the Commission and the Member States of the Union on the excellent work done since 2013 to develop and finalize Agenda 2063. However, The expectations from our people are high, and we cannot fail in the implementation of Agenda 2063 to redefine, lead, and fund our own development and future. To realize our vision, we continue to support attempts to establish sustainable and predictable sources of funding for the African Union that will ensure less reliance on development partners for the implementation of our African projects and programs. As the AU, we also need to create the necessary and enabling environment for our socio-economic development and integration. In particular, we need to continue to address the conflicts on the continent and come up with a decisive plan of action to address the current scourge of terrorism. Therefore, we further believe it remains important to ensure that the necessary preventative measures are established. We also need new ways in which we, as Africa, and not our partners, manage our conflict situations. Your Excellencies, the 25th Ordinary Summit of the African Union provides us the specific opportunity to express our resolve on the challenges and opportunities Africa is experiencing, and to affirm our strong political will to rid ourselves of these challenges. Welcome to South Africa, Your Excellencies, and your esteemed delegations. We wish you successful deliberations and a successful summit. I thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Tout en remerciant le président, son Excellence Dr. Président Jacob Zuma pour son discours cadre d'ouverture, je voudrais à présent inviter son Excellence Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, à prononcer son discours.
Thank you, Program Director. Your Excellency, President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, our host, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, and Heads of Delegations, Your Excellency, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the Arab League, Your Excellency, the President of Palestine, Your Excellencies, former heads of state and government, and former Secretaries General and Chairpersons of the OAU and AU, Your Excellency, Carlos Lopez, Executive Chair of UNECA, Your Excellency, Dr. Donald Kaberuka, President of the African Development Bank, Excellencies, members of the Executive Council and other ministers, representatives of AU organs, Deputy Chairperson Erastus Mwenja, and fellow commissioners, CEO of NEPAD, Excellencies, heads of regional organizations, the RECs, Excellencies, members of the PRC, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished invited guests. Let me welcome all of you to this 25th Summit of Heads of State and Government. Karibuni, Agwaba. I would like to thank the President, the government and the people of the Republic of South Africa for the excellent arrangements and legendary hospitality extended to all of us. Let me start by welcoming and congratulating the presidents who are joining the summit for the first time after their elections. President Muhammadu Buhari of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Hage Geingob of the Republic of Namibia, President Filipe Nyusi of the Republic of Mozambique, and Prime Minister Pakalitha Motsoeneng of the Kingdom of Lesotho. Would also like to congratulate my Prime Minister, who is the Prime Minister in my home for the past 2.5 years, Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn of the and President Omar al-Bashir for their re-elections. Excellencies, when we met in January this year, we were still in the throes of the Ebola epidemic. But thanks to the resilience and hard work of the peoples and the governments of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, to the young African men and women of ASEWA, and the member states who sent them, the private sector and the international community, and African citizens, Liberia has been declared Ebola-free for the last 78 days. We congratulate President Salif Johnson, her government, and the people of Liberia for this achievement. In the other two countries, Sierra Leone and Guinea, numbers have significantly reduced. We should not get complacent, though. We must stay the course until the other two countries are also declared Ebola-free. The lessons from the Ebola virus disease is that the African solidarity and resolve, with African solidarity and resolve, we can find solutions to our challenges. But also the disease exposed the weaknesses of our health systems, especially public health. As we move towards recovery, we must also look at training more health workers and build and strengthen our health systems and infrastructure. Excellencies, again, we've been faced with the tragedy of many people dying in the Sahel and Mediterranean Sea, and also with incidences of xenophobia. And these are the people who leave their countries not out of choice, but out of desperation to try and make a living elsewhere. I was inspired when I was trying to put together my thoughts by one of the finest sons of our soil, Pixlika Isaac Hasebe, in his medal-winning essay, The Regeneration of Africa. And this essay was written in 1906, Columbia University. And I'll just quote a few extracts from him. He hails from Africa, from this soil. And he says, the African people, although not a strictly homogeneous race, possess a common fundamental sentiment which is everywhere manifest, crystallizing itself into one common controlling idea. Conflicts and strife are rapidly disappearing before the fusing force of this enlightened perception of the true intertribal relations, which relations should subsist among a people with a common destination, close quotes. It is this common destination that should guide us towards an integrated, prosperous, peaceful, and people-centered Africa, which is a dynamic force in the world. Of course, for this to happen, we should refuse to camp forever on the borders of the industrial world. And having learned that knowledge is power, must educate our children and the youth, as Pixley Gaseme said in 1906. Indeed, if we educate and skill our people with an emphasis on science, engineering, technology, maths, research, and innovation, including technical and vocational skills, our people will stop undertaking the perilous journeys across the Sahel and the Mediterranean. When we undertake this skills revolution, extremists, armed groups, and terrorists will find it difficult, if not impossible, to recruit our young men and women. Instead, our young men and women will have the skills to generate electricity, including renewables on our continent. They will produce enough food for the entire continent as they modernize and grow agriculture and go into processing and agribusiness. They will stop camping at the borders and shores of the industrial world, but will transform our economies through industrialization, manufacturing, by adding value to our natural resources. They will develop our blue economy and build our infrastructure. They will connect our capitals and commercial centers through ICT and through highways, rail, aviation, and oceanic highways and waterways. They will ensure that this is done through the most modern of technology, including the high-speed train, which will connect our capitals. They will create a uniquely African continent whose economic development will not only be based on profit, but on the needs of the people, driven by the youth and women. They will create a prosperous and non-sexist continent, and they will take charge of our outer space. Excellencies, to achieve Seme's dream, there are a few hurdles we have to overcome. We must believe in ourselves. We have to realize that the demographic dividend is possible if we adopt the right policies, manage our diversity, and make every citizen feel valued and part of the driving force for change and progress, irrespective of tribe, religion, color, or creed, or whether they are a man or a woman, boy or a girl. In the world today, the countries that now drive the world economy are those with huge populations, such as the emerging economies of China, India, Brazil. Even in our continent, the biggest economy has the biggest population. They are, of course, in the same league in terms of population numbers as Africa, but they have the advantage that they are one country. They are united. China is one country, India is one country. And it is for this reason that even though we cannot be one country, but we need to speed up our integration. We need to speed up our unity. And we must recall Kwame Nkrumah's words that Africa must unite or perish. Excellencies, this is why we are so excited about the signing of the trade agreement by the 26 countries that make up the tripartite, COMESA, ECA, and SADC in Sharm el-Sheikh this week. This indeed is a good basis for the launch of the continental free trade. Of course, ECOWAS, if we add ECOWAS to this, It already makes 41 countries. So it means that the continental free trade is within reach. This will not only boost intra-Africa trade, but also boost investments. In a similar vein, if we move faster on the free movement of people and goods and services, and on the African passport, we are sure to see an increase in trade, as well as tourism, and as well as in our economic growth. Excellencies, the adoption of the first 10-year implementation plan, which we hope will happen, of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, will signal a new determination and a desire to bequeath a better Africa to the next generation. We should chart a new, unique Africa without comparison. We don't have to compare ourselves to anyone. Our ancient civilization cannot compare to any other. If we look at the obelisks of Aksum, the civilization and the pyramids of Egypt, the Nok and the Ashanti, the empires of Songhai, Mali and Monamatapa, the royal houses of Nubia, Benin, Konjo, Dahomey, Abyssinia, Zimbabwe, Mapungubwe, they compare to no other. And of course, the Egyptian, Ethiopian, and Sudanese pyramids, the mosque of Timbuktu, our languages, our art, music, and dance. These were created by African geniuses, and they created what is uniquely African. So as the leading generation of our time, it is upon us to help chart our uniquely African path and place in the world today. And Agenda 2063 is our roadmap and beacon. And of course, it is up to us as the leadership to inspire young people to reach for the sky. Going back to Seme, who also said, in all races, genius is like a spark which concealed in the bosom of a flint bursts forth at the summoning stroke. It is our responsibility in all sectors to create conditions that will act as that summoning stroke for the human genius of Africa. It will be contributions of African young people, its men and women, its intellectuals, its entrepreneurs, artists, sports people, today that will shape our destiny. Of course, Seme was dreaming of this Africa in 1906. So in a way, we are a century late. But of course, being a century late in terms of Seme's dream, but we can already see in the cities and towns, in the rural areas, the spark of this bright Africa. In building our shared prosperity, we must be uniquely African by placing the human being at the center. As Seme said, the most essential departure of this new civilization is that it shall be thoroughly spiritual and humanistic, indeed a regeneration, moral and eternal. Excellencies, by January next year, we shall present the comprehensive strategy to build African capacity and skills for implementing Agenda 2063. These capacities and skills plans shall be geared towards the empowerment of Africa's young people, women, creating an enabling environment for them to become the drivers of our transformation and development. Over the last 50 years, our development agenda is focused mainly on primary education. It is now time to urgently pay attention to vocational and higher training. We cannot drive our economic development only through primary education. We need champions for higher education to help steer and support the African higher education sector. At the Education Summit hosted in Dakar, Senegal by President Macky Sall in March 2015, His Excellency at that meeting accepted graciously to be one of those champions who will be paying special attention to the issue of education, harmonization of higher education. And so I'm sure we will have volunteers to join him to be champions for higher education. This will enable our young people to study and apply their skills anywhere on the continent. Between now and January, we must also do more to popularize the 10-year plan to align Agenda 2063 to our national and regional strategies and report on our recommendations on the allocation of roles and responsibilities between the REX, the AU Commission, and the NEPAD agency. We will also be sending teams to countries who ask for assistance to domesticate their plans and to realign their plans with Agenda 2063, and we will undertake that exercise together with NEPAD. The AU Commission and other organs will also align their strategic plans with Agenda 2063. Excellencies, our coastline and waterways are amongst the largest in the world and offer for us much opportunity. Consequently, on the 25th of July this year, as was decided, we shall launch the Decade of African Oceans and Seas. We will also celebrate that day annually as the Day of African Oceans and Seas, so as to fully utilize and create awareness on the opportunities presented to us by the ocean and the seas. We therefore call on the coastal countries, island states, and countries with waterways to join us in launching this important decade of Africa so that we can indeed be part of the movement towards the blue economy. Excellencies, already, African women in maritime met in Luanda, Angola early this year, refusing to camp on the borders of the industrial world, but instead chartered areas of cooperation for women in shipping, port management, fishing, and other areas of the blue economy. We have to take charge of our oceanic space, as these women are showing. Excellencies, Africa has many examples of indigenous and good farming practices, some of them climate smart, and we must share these experiences and replicate and upscale them. In addition, more must be done on agro-processing and agribusinesses as part of building our collective food security, to reverse our high food import bill, and as part of industrialization and job creation. We look forward to the recommendations from the high-level gender panel and ministers of women affairs and financial inclusion on agro-businesses to the summit. Excellencies, we announced in January that the Pan-African Parliament will host the third AU Intergenerational Dialogue. We are glad to report that this did indeed take place. The young men and women from across the continent met with the parliamentarians, and they reached certain recommendations. They are asking for a target youth employment and investment in our Agenda 2063 first 10-year plan. They say they didn't see a youth employment target there. And they would like to see an annual report on the status of the continent's youth. So we'll have to see how we prepare this annual report together. Excellencies, in my 2013 email to Kwame Nkrumah, I spoke about students forming AU clubs. I'm happy to say there is a delegation from the University of Cape Town, and this delegation comes from the AU club, who are present here today. We would like to know about similar clubs in other universities We welcome the UCT AU Club delegation, and we encourage all students and youth to form these AU clubs at their institutions and communities. We are also happy about the numbers of women at this summit. As they say in South Africa, Malibongwe igama lamakhosikazi. Excellencies, Seme, going back to him again, contended that the victories of peace are greater and more abiding than the spoils of war. It is for this reason that our Peace and Security Council, our peacekeepers, our mediators, our high representatives are working tirelessly to silence the guns within the 5 years we have pledged. But as political leadership, government, political parties, faith-based organizations, and communities, we must play our part to build tolerant, inclusive, democratic communities and societies where the dignity and rights of all are respected. Unfortunately, women and children are the main victims of conflicts, enduring untold miseries, hardships, sexual and other forms of violence in wars and conflicts, which they play no part in starting. Our resolve to silence the guns must therefore give hope to women and children suffering from the terror of Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab. Our resolve must provide renewed hope to the peoples in conflict-ridden areas in Darfur East, DRC, Libya, Mali, Somalia, and South Sudan, where lives and livelihoods have been shattered. We must, in the words of Sem, ensure that conflict and strife rapidly disappear. Excellencies, we're encouraged by the movement on the decision on alternate sources of funding to incrementally provide more domestic resources to the AU and its organs, starting from next year. We take the first step in this direction, which is testimony to the determination of Africans to take charge of their destiny. We thank the South African government for the Golf Day and the fundraising dinner last night, and for all the individual pledges. Excellencies, we welcome the fact that later today we'll be discussing the theme, Women's Empowerment for the Realization of Agenda 2063. Of course, women are the biggest part of the population, and Agenda 2063 is about people. We cannot leave out half of the population. If Agenda 2063 is to succeed, it must empower women and youth to become part of the drivers of transformation. May I also dare to say, women and youth are also the majority of voters. We must therefore heed President Nelson Mandela's words when he said, I quote, "The legacy of oppression weighs heavily on women. As long as women are bound by poverty, and as long as they are looked down upon, human rights will lack substance. As long as outmoded ways of thinking prevent women from making a meaningful contribution to society, progress will be slow. As long as the continent refuses to acknowledge the equal role of more than half of itself, it is doomed to fail." Close quote. Ngiyabonga, asante sana, ngiyalebuga, shukran, merci, obrigado, kanimambo.
Nous vous remercions, Madame la Présidente de la Commission. Je voudrais à présent inviter Son Excellence Dr Nabil Al-Arabi, secrétaire général de la Ligue des États arabes, pour son adresse à l'Assemblée.
فخامة الرئيس روبرت موغابي رئيس جمهورية زيمبابوي رئيس الاتحاد الإفريقي، فخامة الرئيس جاكوب زوما رئيس جمهورية جنوب إفريقيا، فخامة الرئيس محمود عباس رئيس دولة فلسطين، معاد للسيدة دلاميني زوما رئيسة مفوضية الاتحاد الإفريقي، أصحاب الفخامة، أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، السيدات والسادة، يسعدني باسم جامعة الدول العربية أن أهنئ فخامة الرئيس روبرت موغابي رئيس جمهورية زيمبابوي على رئاسته للدورة الحالية للقمة التي تعقد تحت شعار هام وهو تمكين المرأة والتنمية. كما يسعدني أن أحيي الاتحاد الإفريقي الذي صار بحق بفضل حكمة وعزيمة قادته منظمة قارية فاعلة ذات كفاءة عالية في التعامل مع التحديات التي تواجه القارة الإفريقية في مختلف المجالات. أصحاب الفخامة، أتحدث اليوم من جنوب إفريقيا، هذا البلد العزيز إلى قلب كل صاحب ضمير حي باعتباره رمزا للانتصار ضد الظلم والعنصرية والأبرتايد. هذا البلد الذي أثبت بنضاله أن لغة القوة لا شك مهزومة أمام عزيمة الشعوب في نيل حريتها، وأن التمييز العنصري هو عار على كل من اقترفه وكل من يقترفه، وشر يحاربه العالم المتحضر. وسوف تظل مسيرة تحرر جنوب أفريقيا من هول التمييز العنصري الذي عاشت تحته، ستظل دائما ملهمة للشعب الفلسطيني في كفاحه التاريخي لمقاومة ظلم الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وسياسة الأبرتايد غير المسبوقة. السادات والسادة، إن عالم اليوم القائم على بناء التكتلات السياسية والتنموية الناجحة بات يتطلب بذل مزيد من الجهد لإنجاح الشراكة الإفريقية العربية للمساعدة في إدراج وصياغة الأولويات المشتركة ضمن بنود الأجندة العالمية. ويسعدني في هذا الشأن الإشارة إلى الجهود الحثيثة لتعزيز التعاون الإفريقي العربي في مختلف المجالات المتعلقة بالتنمية الريفية والتنمية الزراعية والأمن الغذائي، بما في ذلك التحضيرات المؤسسية الجارية لعقد الاجتماع الوزاري الإفريقي العربي الثالث حول الزراعة والأمن الغذائي في كمبالا في شهر أكتوبر القادم. وأثق تماما في أن آليات الشراكة سوف تستفيد من النتائج الطموحة لقمة التكتلات الاقتصادية الإفريقية الثلاثة لدول الكوميسا، مجموعة شرق إفريقيا ومجموعة تنمية الجنوب الإفريقي سادك، التي عقدت في شرم الشيخ في مصر في 10 من هذا الشهر، بحيث تفتح الباب أمام مزيد من التبادل التجاري وتوفير فرص العمل وتدفق الاستثمارات بين هذه المناطق. أصحاب الفخامة والسعادة، إن التعامل مع القضايا المصيرية التي تعاني منها القارة الإفريقية والوطن العربي يشكل كلا لا يتجزأ، ويحتاج إلى رؤى شاملة سياسية وأمنية وتنموية واقتصادية وثقافية. واقتناعا بهذه الحقيقة اتبعت جامعة الدول العربية خطا متناسقا ومتكاملا ومستمرا مع الاتحاد الإفريقي لمعالجة القضايا والأزمات المشتركة. فلسطين أيها السادة والسيدات ما زالت مع عظيم الأسف الدولة الوحيدة في العالم في جميع أنحاء العالم التي ترزح تحت ظلم الاحتلال وعنصريته وغياب موازين العدل والإنصاف الدولية تجاه الشعب الفلسطيني. ولا يقبل عقل متحضر في العقد الثاني من الألفية الثالثة استمرار وجود قوة احتلال عسكرية تقوم على أساس أبرتايد، تقوم على أساس عنصرية بغيضة. إسرائيل تضرب عرض الحائط بجميع المواثيق والقرارات الدولية التي تطالبها بإرجاع الحق لأصحابه. كل ثقة في أن الدول الأفريقية في مجلس الأمن الدولي وفي جميع المنتديات الدولية المختلفة ستكون سندا قويا للحقوق الفلسطينية لتسجل نصرا جديدا في مواجهة الأبرتايد والاحتلال والتمييز العنصري. أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، لقد حرصت جامعة الدول العربية على التنسيق والتعاون مع الاتحاد الإفريقي في جهود استعادة الأمن والاستقرار في الصومال لتحقيق رؤية 2016 الخاصة ببناء مؤسسات الدولة في الصومال. وأود أن أشيد عاليا بالدور الهام والقيم الذي تقوم به قوات بعثة الاتحاد الإفريقي في الصومال أميسوم لدعم جهود الدولة الصومالية في نشر الأمن والاستقرار ومواجهة الإرهاب، كما برز في الجهد المشترك المبذول مع الحكومة السودانية والأطراف السودانية لتعزيز اتفاقات السلام والمصالحات الوطنية الشاملة في مختلف أنحاء السودان الشقيق. كما شمل التنسيق دعم الحوار الوطني الليبي الذي تقوده الأمم المتحدة في إطار قرارات مجلس الأمن ذات الصلة لتشكيل حكومة وحدة وطنية ودعم الشرعية ودعم جهود دول الجوار لإنجاح العملية السياسية وتمكين السلطات الليبية من مواجهة تمدد الإرهاب على التراب الليبي، والذي أصبح يهدد العالم أجمع وليس المنطقة فقط. السيدات والسادة، إن تداخل المجالين الإفريقي والعربي وتكاملهما حقيقة ثابتة، فأمن إفريقيا وأمن العالم العربي مرتبطان ومتداخلان استراتيجيا، وقد بات موقف العالم العربي وإفريقيا من مسألة الانتشار النووي موقفا واحدا، بينما أصبحت إفريقيا لا نووية طبقا لاتفاقية بلندابة، فلا يزال العالم العربي يعاني من أجل إنشاء منطقة خالية من السلاح النووي في عموم الشرق الأوسط بامتداده الإفريقي. ومن هنا تكمن أهمية الدعوة لتحقيق عالمية معاهدة عدم الانتشار النووي كأساس ضروري لإخلاء منطقة الشرق الأوسط من السلاح النووي وأسلحة الدمار الشامل، خاصة وأن دولا عربية إفريقية تقع في نطاق اتفاقية بلندابة والمنطقة الخالية المزمع إنشائها في الشرق الأوسط. أصحاب الفخامة والسيدات والسادة، وفي الختام، لا شك أن الخطط الإفريقية العربية المشتركة واسعة وطموحة ومشروعة، فهي موجهة لشعوب المنطقتين، وسوف تستمر جامعة الدول العربية في خطاها مع مفوضية الاتحاد الإفريقي لتحقيق الشراكة الإفريقية العربية الذي ستظل دائما مدخلا هاما للحفاظ على أمن وسلامة المجتمع وتحقيق النماء والتطور، حتى تشارك جميع دول المنطقة بحق في لعب دورها الطبيعي في بناء الحضارة الإنسانية. شكرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Nous vous remercions, Excellence. Je voudrais à présent inviter très respectueusement Son Excellence Monsieur Mahmoud Abbas, président de l'État de Palestine et président du comité exécutif de l'Organisation de la libération de la Palestine.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فخامة الرئيس الصديق روبرت موغابي، فخامة الرئيس الصديق جاكوب زوما رئيس جنوب افريقيا، معالي السيدة زوما رئيسة مفوضية الاتحاد الافريقي، اصحاب الفخامة والدولة، معالي الامين العام لجامعة الدول العربية، الاصدقاء الاعزاء، أشكركم على دعوتكم الكريمة لي لمشاركتكم هذه القمة في دورتها 25 تحت عنوان سنة تمكين المرأة والتنمية. ويسعدني أن أتواجد بينكم هذا العام أيضا، معززين بالتالي هذه العلاقة النضالية العميقة ومؤكدين على الروابط التي تربط فلسطين بالقارة الإفريقية، تلك الروابط التي تربط القارة الإفريقية بفلسطين تاريخا وحاضرا ومستقبلا. كما يطيب لي أن أكون وإياكم اليوم في انعقاد هذه الدورة للاتحاد الإفريقي العتيد هنا في جمهورية جنوب أفريقيا الصديقة، صاحبة التاريخ النضالي العريق من أجل الحرية والسيادة والاستقلال وانتصاراتها في التخلص من العنصرية والأبارتايد. وأتمنى لاتحادكم ودوله الأعضاء تحقيق المزيد من النجاحات لما فيه خير شعوبكم وأوطانكم الصديقة. وإنني لعلى ثقة تامة بأن الاتحاد الإفريقي بما يضم في عضويته من دول تمثل بمجموعها هذه القارة العملاقة المفعمة بالتاريخ والتضحيات الجسام، إنما يقدم لنا عبرة وخلاصة تجربة خلاقة يستلهم منها شعبي المكافح في فلسطين، وفي الشتات العبرة لإنجاز حقوقه الوطنية الثابتة في نيل حريته واستقلاله وسيادته. نعلم أيها السادة بأن قمتكم هذه حافلة بالموضوعات والقضايا الحساسة والجوهرية التي تهم قارتكم وشعوبها، وتهدف لتعزيز العمل المشترك فيما بينها، وخاصة بشأن تمكين المرأة والتنمية والنهوض بالاقتصاد ورفع مستوى المعيشة، وكذلك العمل من أجل السلام والأمن والاستقرار ومكافحة العنف والإرهاب بكل أشكاله ومسمياته، مؤكدين دعمنا وتأييدنا لجهودكم في هذه المجالات الهامة. ونحن على أتم الاستعداد للتعاون وإياكم لتبادل الخبرات وتوفير الطاقات البشرية الفلسطينية المؤهلة، وبما يعود بالفائدة المشتركة على الجميع، ومن أجل حماية وتعميق إنجازات هذه القارة العزيزة. ومن ناحية أخرى فإننا نتابع بقلق رغم بعد المسافات تفاصيل ما يجري من تطورات وأحداث في بعض دول القارة، ونأمل أن يتمكن الاتحاد ودوله بالحكمة المعروفة عنهم من تجاوز هذه المحن الطارئة من أجل التركيز وتسخير جميع الإمكانات لصالح تنمية شعوب هذه القارة. وفي هذا المقام فإننا ندعو المجتمع الدولي بأسره، وبخاصة الدول القادرة فيه على الوقوف بقوة وإخلاص إلى جانب دول القارة الإفريقية في جهودها المبذولة لتحقيق التنمية المستدامة وفي توفير الأمن والاستقرار والرخاء لمواطنيها كافة. فخامة الرئيس، الأصدقاء الأعزاء، إننا إذ نعتز بعلاقات الصداقة التي تربطنا بدول وشعوب قارتكم الأبية التي نالت منذ عقود حريتها واستقلالها، لنثمن عاليا وقوفكم إلى جانب قضيتنا العادلة، متطلعين لاستمرار دعمكم السياسي والدبلوماسي لتطلعات شعبنا الفلسطيني لتمكينه من نيل حريته وتكريس استقلاله واقعا ملموسا عبر دولة فلسطين المستقلة ذات السيادة وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية، من خلال إنهاء الاحتلال الإسرائيلي الجاثم على أرضنا ومقدراتنا. ونحن من طرفنا ندرك بأن أفريقيا التي وقفت معنا وظلت على مدى العقود الماضية في الهيئات والمحافل الدولية كافة تدعم حقوق شعبنا، لن تخذلنا في هذا المجال. أيها الأصدقاء الأعزاء، نحن ماضون في استكمال وتطوير بناء مؤسسات دولتنا وفق معايير سيادة القانون والحفاظ على الأمن واحترام حقوق الإنسان والمرأة، وفي إطار من التعددية السياسية وعلى أسس الديمقراطية والمساءلة والشفافية. كما وأن توقيع دولة فلسطين مؤخراً لعدد كبير من المعاهدات والمواثيق الدولية ليس موجها ضد أحد، بل هو تأكيد على رغبتنا في موائمة عمل مؤسساتنا وتشريعاتنا الوطنية وفقاً للمعايير الدولية، وفي تثبيت الشخصية القانونية لدولة فلسطين إضافة إلى انخراط دولتنا في الإطار المتعدد لصالح السلم والعدالة والتنمية والأمن العالمي. وعلى الصعيد الداخلي الفلسطيني فإننا نعمل على تذليل العقبات والعراقيل التي تحول دون تنظيم الانتخابات الفلسطينية، ومن أجل ذلك فإننا مستمرون في توحيد أرضنا وشعبنا وتحقيق المصالحة الوطنية. وكلفنا الحكومة الفلسطينية بالعمل المتواصل لتوفير ما نحتاجه من أموال لإعادة إعمار ما دمره الاحتلال الإسرائيلي في عدوانه على قطاع غزة، رغم العقبات التي تعترض سبيلها، حيث ترك العدوان الإسرائيلي قطاعنا مثقلا بالجراح. فإضافة إلى أكثر من 2200 شهيد أغلبهم من الأطفال والنساء، دمر أكثر من 80,000 بيت، إضافة إلى البنية التحتية في هذا القطاع. وبهذه المناسبة ورغم كل هذا الدمار والاعتداء المتواصل إلا أننا نجدد التأكيد على تمسكنا بخيار السلام الشامل والعادل، وخيار الدولتين اللتين تعيشان جنبا إلى جنب بسلام وأمن وحسن جوار، وعلى أساس قرارات الشرعية الدولية ومبادرة السلام العربية والاتفاقات الموقعة بين الجانبين، وصولا إلى إقامة دولة على حدود 67 وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية، وحل باقي المسائل المعلقة بيننا وبين الإسرائيليين. إنما يمنع تحقيق هذا السلام المنشود هو استمرار إسرائيل في الاحتلال والاستيطان وفرض الأمر الواقع، مستندة إلى غطرسة القوة. ونود أن نؤكد رفضنا لأي حلول انتقالية أو ما يسمى بالدولة ذات الحدود المؤقتة التي تقسم الأرض والشعب والوطن. نرفض هذا رفضا قاطعا. وفي هذا الإطار فإن أي مبادرات أو جهود لتحقيق السلام يجب أن تكون وفق المعايير والقرارات الدولية المعتمدة، وفي إطار سقف زمني محدد لإنهاء الاحتلال، وبالتنسيق مع لجنة المتابعة العربية لتمكين شعبنا من نيل حريته وسيادته. فخامة الرئيس، الأصدقاء الأعزاء، للأسف الشديد فإن الحكومة الإسرائيلية الجديدة والتي هي امتداد للحكومات السابقة تتهرب من استحقاقات السلام المنشود، وأن استمرار إسرائيل في رفضها للقانون الدولي يستدعي منا جميعا التحرك العاجل. وندعوكم أيها الأصدقاء الأعزاء لاستمرار مناصرة الموقف الفلسطيني في مساعيه وفي إطار مجلس الأمن والمنظمات الدولية لإنهاء الاحتلال الإسرائيلي على أراضينا، الأمر الذي من شأنه أن يجلب السلام المنشود لمنطقتنا ويزيل حالة الاحتقان التي تشهدها والتي قد تدفع بها نحو حروب طائفية وعرقية ذات صبغة دينية، وهذا ما لا نريده إطلاقا، والذي ستكون عواقبه وخيمة على المنطقة والعالم بأسره. وكما تعلمون فقد شرعت مؤخرا مؤسسات الاتحاد الأوروبي بوضع علامات تمييزية على منتجات المستوطنات الإسرائيلية لتوعية المستهلك الأوروبي من خطورة شراء واستهلاك تلك المنتجات غير القانونية حسب القانون الدولي. وعليه ندعوكم جميعا أيها الإخوة لاتخاذ خطوات شبيهة على مستوى الاتحاد الإفريقي، رغم أن بعض دولكم كانت سباقة في التعامل مع موضوع مقاطعة منتجات المستوطنات كجزء من إجراءات أوسع لوقف القيام بأية أعمال في تلك المستوطنات، وفي اعتماد إجراءات المقاطعة الشاملة للمستوطنات الإسرائيلية المقامة على الأرض الفلسطينية المحتلة في مخالفة صريحة للقانون الدولي. ختاماً، أشكركم أيها الأصدقاء على دعمكم المتواصل لقضيتنا العادلة، قضية إفريقيا بأسرها. قضية فلسطين هي قضية إفريقيا أيضاً، ونشيد بمساهماتكم الإيجابية التي ترسخونها دوماً في المحافل الدولية، بحيث تعزز من صمودنا وتقربنا من استكمال الاستقلال والحرية. وفي نهاية كلمتي أتمنى لقمتكم النجاح، ولقارة إفريقيا ودولها وشعوبها الصديقة والاتحاد الإفريقي دوام التقدم والازدهار، والسلام عليكم.
Nous vous remercions, Monsieur le Président. Now I have the honor to invite His Excellency Robert Mugabe, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Chairperson of the African Union, for his opening speech.
Your Excellency, Comrade Jacob Zuma, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Honorable Ministers, Commissioners, distinguished delegates and invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends. May I welcome you all to the 25th session of the African Union Assembly in this bustling city of Johannesburg. Let me once again express our deepest appreciation to President Jacob Zuma, the government and people of South Africa, for the warm welcome and generous hospitality, as well as the excellent facilities that have been put at our disposal. Let me also take this opportunity to extend a very special welcome to those of us who are participating in our meetings for the very first time since their assumption of office. We congratulate you on successfully holding peaceful and credible elections in your respective countries, thus further consolidating our democratic values. We look forward to working closely with you all for the betterment of our people and continent. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, you will recall that one of the major decisions we took in Malabo in July 2014 was to streamline the working methods of our organization with a view to enabling it to better respond and deliver to the expectations of our people. I want to commend the African Union Commission Chairperson, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, Permanent Representative Committee, and the Executive Council for expeditiously implementing this decision. This is evidenced by the way we conducted our business this morning and the focused discussions that we have just had. While these first few steps are commendable, we must do more as we strive to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of our union at all levels. There is need to further rationalize our agenda and reduce the number of decisions that we take at every summit. We must prioritize and focus on fewer issues that require attention at the continental level, in line with the principle of subsidiarity. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the theme for this year, namely, I quote, Year of Women Empowerment and Development towards Agenda 2063, unquote, is both timely and significant. The adoption of this theme by the African Union Assembly is a clear testimony of Africa's resolve to ensure that our commitments to gender equality, as enshrined in the relevant AU instruments that we have developed over the years, are effectively and efficiently implemented. As we reflect on this very important theme, we cannot but celebrate the immense and historic contributions that African women over the years have made to the advancement of our continent. Whenever I think of the virtues and the indomitable spirit that epitomizes the African woman, I'm reminded of the heroines across the African continent who stood up against the forces of colonialism and occupation. Who can ever forget the indomitable and fighting spirit of such legends as Ya Asantewa, Queen Mother of the Ashanti Kingdom? Ya Asantewa, Queen Mother of the Ashanti Kingdom, who confronted by the British, when confronted by the British and British imperialism, said to her people, I quote, that's what she said, if you men of Ashanti will not go forward, then we will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We will fight the white man. We will fight until the last of us falls in the battlefield, unquote. That must have put us to shame, we men. We men are not women. And so it has always been. I have no doubt that each of us here present, has a story to tell about the great African women leaders in our nations. We in Zimbabwe also have a story to tell about the woman Mbuya Nehanda. Mbuya means grandmother. Mbuya Nehanda, who led the men during the 1986 to 1987 war against the British. And when those other men she was leading with were arrested together with her, and she was asked to submit, she said she would not submit. She refused. She said, I don't want your religion. The others agreed to be baptized and christened the last moment before they were hanged. She said, yes, I'm going to die, but my bones will rise tomorrow. And indeed they rose, and indeed we fought the British, and indeed we conquered the British. So her bones are what we are now. We have risen from her, from what she was. Women who yesteryear fought side by side with men are many in our various regions and various traditions. But today, as we fought, confronted by this deadly disease, Ebola, our colleague, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and the chairperson of the Commission, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, among others, are trailblazers in this crusade. They are today's living testimonies of the achievements we have attained over the years in the area of women empowerment. Africa has demonstrated that there is no task which women cannot do. Women of Africa, we salute and honor you. And tell me here, is there a man who can say, I am not born of a woman? Let him raise his hand, let him raise his hand and say, I dropped from heaven. No, we all came through the same road. And for 9 months, each and every one of us was born in that womb, the mother's womb. And even today, when I am struck, say, in my way, I say, oh, Amai, oh, mother. I don't say, oh, father. So the mother is very dear. And it was not only the 9 months, mind you, all that suckling on the breast for all that time. And now here we are. Yes, you're your president. You're head of state. Yes, you're a businessman. Yes, you are this. And we look down upon the women and say, you sweep the roads, you sweep the house, you cook for me, you do this and you do that. And she does it. She doesn't say no. They are a special breed, these people. It was that woman yesterday who in her groundnut field toiled, little cotton field, worked from day to day, got a bit of money. The child was going to university. He had only a bursary which covered the scholarship. No pocket money, no money for books, no money for traveling. But she got it. She sent him the bit she had. She fell short. She went to a nearby teacher. My son says he has no money. What he wants is a mere $12.06. She did it. And the son was Robert Mugabe at 40. They care for us more than our fathers. Our fathers, yes, we thank them. They were the bulls, yes. But they are not as particular, as meticulous in their love. They don't even, when we grow old, care for us very much. You're grown up, you can find your way. And of course, the smacks on your seats, you will never forget. This old man. What sort of man is he? Oh, but the mother will always shed a tear when you're sick. It may be a fever. It may be a stomachache. If she is not that modern, she will go to the village herbalist and say, my boy has stomachache. Can you give him something? And some roots will be given to assist him. But nowadays, no, people know better. There are clinics. She will take you to a clinic. You have a baby, it's registered, and the doctor or the nurse says, come regularly on this day with the baby. We want to see how he or she grows. It's a mother carrying you on your back. The huge man you are now. Just imagine. So it's not just the womb, it's also their back. They also, mind you, cook every day. They must see there is food, even where the father has no money to buy, to enable her to buy food. She will look, what do I have? What do I have in the granary, in the villages? If you have lived a rural life, you will know how dear mothers are. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, you will recall that at our last assembly, we directed that the first 10-year implementation plan, our first concrete step to actualize Agenda 2063 be developed for our consideration. Our Assembly will have an opportunity to deliberate on this important matter. Without preempting our discussion, I reiterate the people of Africa must continue to own Agenda 2063. Born when was it? The OE was born? 65? 1963. And this is now another 100 years, isn't it? 2063. And what shall we have done when we are gone or when we have grown old? To that end, we have to endeavor to avail the requisite technical, financial, human, material, and other resources for the implementation of this African blueprint. Let that be our own step as we move along the track where the footsteps of our founding fathers are still observable in our minds. The decision we took at the last assembly on alternative sources of funding is of paramount importance in this regard. We need to see greater efforts towards funding our operations and thus ensure ownership of our organization and its programs. To underpin our resource mobilization efforts, we need to tape the potential of our bountiful natural resources. It should be tapped rather than tape. The resources and leverage them for social and economic transformation. We therefore need to industrialize so as to beneficiate and add value to our natural resources, and move away from the export of raw materials. We've been importing raw cotton, raw chrome, raw almost everything. Industrialization is now the theme. It is only then that we can talk about the awakening and rising of this African giant that has been asleep for far too long. We have been lulled to sleep by the fact of mere independence, mere freedom. But as we look back now, the number of years we have been independent, and try to see what we have done to raise the level of development in our countries, we are ashamed. I am ashamed. And why? Our allies will never give assistance to enable us to raise the standard of living in our countries by way of industrializing our economy, adding value to the raw materials, building industries, little industries in our country based on the resources that we have. No, they want you to export these raw materials to them so they can add value. They can employ more of their own people. They can then earn more as against us. And we have been happy to import even foodstuffs. Foodstuffs we need in the home. Sugar, butter, even milk. When we have cows galore. While we celebrate the fact that Africa has 10 of the world's fastest growing economies, we have to ensure that this growth is sustainable and inclusive so that it makes a qualitative difference to the livelihoods of our people. This positive narrative of an Africa that is rising is, however, severely battered by the terrorist attacks against defenseless and innocent civilians. Some of this is of our own making. People don't want to accept they have lost an election. They always have been cheated. We have been cheated. The elections have not been free and fair. We cannot stand it. We will fight against it. We organize, perhaps, people in the army. There is a coup d'etat. And fights start. Terrorism starts. Then, of course, there are those with very sharp eyes who begrudge us for what God has given us. They wish our oil was theirs. They wish our diamonds and gold and all we have by way of underground wealth, all that wealth they wish was their own. How can these natives continue to have that? And when they look at their little island, the little British Isles there, naked with nothing to offer, except now the remains of coal, which they are burning every day. When they look at us and America with its vast territory, with all those automobiles, the flying ones and the ones that run on our roads, the railways, the trains, and they say, the oil we have is not enough, the fuel we have is not enough to sustain us, not enough diesel. Let us store this, ours. There is loss in Africa. They don't know what to do with it in Africa. We will get it by hook or by crook. And they cause wars where there has been peace. Suddenly there is war. Suddenly there is war in Iraq, where Saddam Hussein, he might have been a dictator, but there was peace in his country. They want his oil. And Bush says, no, this man, as an excuse, you must open the door. This man is a cruel man. He is preparing to slaughter others. He has weapons of mass destruction. Poor Saddam Hussein has no media. He cannot answer properly. He cannot defend himself and protect himself. He has weapons of mass destruction. Bush goes to the United Nations. No, the United Nations cannot sustain it. No. Well, with or without the United Nations, I will go fight this man. He is a danger to the world. And little Bush says, little Blair says, I'll follow. Follow my leader wherever he goes. And there they go, the two of them. And sure, Saddam Hussein, they arrest him from his hideout, and they had him tried. They had him executed. Later, Mr. Bush, we told a lie. But we know how to put it to the world. Now we have found that Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction. In the meantime, Bush and his brother had a company sucking oil in Iraq. These are facts. The same story is told about poor Gaddafi, killing civilians. This comes to the United Nations Security Council, Chapter 7. They get the NATO powers, the 2/3 majority. And there they go, all of them. The leader of Britain, the leader of France, the leader of Italy, Berlusconi. I never knew Berlusconi loved fights. I knew he loved women. But this time he had to go with others also, women afterwards. But I must get the oil first. And they were given oil, as I said last night, 35%. Gaddafi is killed, alongside children, also killed. I don't know whether 1 or 2 children are still alive. Now look at the turmoil there is in Iraq. Look at the turmoil there is in Libya. All that to confuse the situation so they can have an excuse to go in and draw the fuel as we fight each other. They are busy drawing fuel and enriching themselves. The same problems are caused us elsewhere. And there are others that we ourselves can prevent, that begin amongst ourselves. Tribalisms, racisms, failure to agree on politics, which way we should go, who should rule, who should not. And we put a yoke around our necks. We said each leaders must have only 2 terms. In Europe, they haven't said that. In America, because they are vast, it's a vast country. Yes, that's where they have 2 terms. But in Europe, no. It's democracy. If the people still want a leader, let the leader continue. But when we have served 2 terms, we have not done much. And 2 terms was like 2 weeks. So we want to go more. So you want another term, and you must find an excuse. The first term I served, no, it was not a real term. But you were there for 5 years. Oh no, it was Parliament which chose me. I should have been chosen by the people, so that one does not count. And the others say it counts. 1, 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years, or 4 years. Then there are fights. And once there are those fights, then these fights have a habit to continue themselves. You beat me yesterday, I'll beat you tomorrow. Kampaori overthrew Sakala yesterday. Aha, now we overthrow you also. You see, things like that continue to happen. Let us learn to be brotherly, to be principled, and to avoid causing problems to our people. Then the people become refugees, because wherever there is conflict, there must be attacks upon ordinary civilians. They must go to the neighboring country for refuge. Then there are others amongst us who say, well, we can get rich through other means. We'll sell drugs. We know where they are. We know how to make them. They sell drugs. Then they must defend themselves against the governments, which regard drug trade as illegal and as dangerous to the people. Then there are wars. I'm glad I witnessed the signing of peace treaty in Mali recently. But there is that problem, the Tuareg. I don't know whether they have now signed, but I was delighted to hear that they had agreed to sign. My friend Keita, Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, I met him here briefly. He will be visiting us after this, and I'm sure he will be able to tell me whether now there is true peace. But that's the country Madi I was talking about yesterday, Modibo Keita's legacy. Why should it be broken into pieces like that? He gave it independence, said no to de Gaulle, because they had had some civilization there with Timbuktu. They had assisted also the Algerians as they fought the French. And it's a great country. Let's help it to achieve its peace. We'll do what we can. President Modibo Keita, we thank you for having come. And we will receive you with real honor that a president deserves. As we soldier ahead in our attempts to build sustainable peace on the continent, we should endeavor to see the full implementation of the peace, security, and cooperation framework for the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the region. The fratricidal conflict in Libya, South Sudan, as well as the peace process in the Central African Republic, are issues that our Union should continue to be fully seized with. I say this, I am aware that our regional organizations have been doing their best, whether it's ECOWAS, it's IGAD, it's SADC, the European, the East African community. We have been doing our best. But sometimes our best is done after the situations will have turned bad. There is violence, there is conflict. We commend the government and people of Mali and other stakeholders for having signed a peace agreement recently. We urge them to meet the commitments made so as to maintain the momentum towards a peaceful Mali. We appeal to the remaining Malian stakeholders to sign onto the agreement for the good of their country in particular and the continent in general. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the prevailing political instability and insecurity in some parts of our continent clearly demonstrate the urgent need to fully operationalize the African Standby Force, ASF, and its rapid deployment. Its rapid deployment capability, the RDC. We need to live up to our commitment to operationalize the African Standby Force by December 2015. This will be an important step towards the goal of silencing the guns by 2020, which is our pledge, as peace and security are necessary prerequisites for the achievement of Agenda 2063. I am encouraged by the fact that we are making steady progress in this regard. The last meeting of the Specialized Technical Committee on Defense and Security held in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, from the 11th to the 16th of May 2015, established that most of the regional standby forces have reached full operational capability. To this end, we look forward to a successful outcome of the Amani Africa 2 field training exercises to be hosted by the SADC region here in South Africa towards the end of 2015, the end of this year. We have to redouble our efforts in dealing with the issue of the unnecessary loss of lives of our young people in the Mediterranean Sea in their desperate bid to reach Europe and other places. We have dwelt on this matter at quite some length. This matter requires our collective and urgent attention. Concrete steps have to be taken to deal with this unfolding tragedy, particularly in terms of addressing its root causes, such as poverty, war, and insecurity, lack of opportunities, perceptions of good and rewarding lives abroad, elsewhere, as well as stamping out human traffickers and smugglers. We should take all these measures with the objective of managing immigration rather than barring or inhibiting it. Suffice it to recall that human migration is as old as the human race itself. We have an obligation to facilitate and create conditions that are conducive and promotive of that movement. In the same vein, and while condemning the recent spate of barbaric violence targeted at foreign nationals in some parts of Durban and Johannesburg in South Africa, let us be cognizant of the fact that this is a regional problem that calls upon all of us to put our heads together to find a lasting solution. United as we have been, we will not fail. And President Zuma has given us details of the programs they have embarked upon and are still embarking upon in order to help bring about calm where yesterday there might have been this disturbance. Government of the Republic of South Africa has therefore left no stone unturned in trying to stem this vice. Excellencies, as we deepen measures to strengthen democracy and good governance on the continent, we acknowledge that we can still do more. We are continuously improving our institutions and systems for ourselves and not for the approbation of others. We therefore appeal for understanding, solidarity, and support as we work towards strengthening our democratic institutions at the national, regional, and continental levels. We desire that there be no interference from outside in the internal affairs of Africa and of African countries as we move ahead with plans and programs for our development. Distinguished delegates, climate change is a major and growing threat to the lives and livelihoods of the people of Africa. It is a threat to sustainable development and undermines the rights of millions of people to life, food, security, water, health, and shelter, among others. Sadly, Africa, a mere victim of climate change, is the worst affected and therefore needs to actively participate in the Conference of Parties, COP21, that will take place in December 2015 in Paris. We should ensure that the outcomes of COP21 will serve the interests of the people of Africa. We therefore must take full advantage of the current assembly to agree on our negotiating position at COP21. Excellencies, allow me to express sincere appreciation on my own behalf and on behalf of the Assembly to the Chairperson of the African Union Commission and their staff, the Executive Council, and the Permanent Representatives Committee for their hard work and diligence, as well as the energies they expended in expeditiously preparing for this meeting. The Assembly is certainly appreciative. We say thank you, and thank you to them. May I, in conclusion, wish us all very fruitful deliberations. In unity and with determination, we shall surely succeed. Merci beaucoup. I thank you. Muchas gracias. Tatenda. Siyabonga. Okay.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, distingués invités, nous saluons la présence dans cette salle de 4 chefs d'État récemment élus. Chacun d'eux a quelque chose à nous dire. Nous allons donc les inviter tour à tour, en commençant par son Excellence Dr Hage Geingob, président de la République de Namibie.
Your Excellency Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, Your Excellency Robert Mugabe, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, my name is Hage Gottfried Geingob. I am the new President of Namibia. I came to report to you on duty, and I cannot dilute the speech made by my icon. So I just came to introduce myself. Thank you.
Nous avons également son Excellence Monsieur Muhammadu Buhari, président de la République fédérale du Nigeria.
Your Excellency, President Robert Mugabe, Chairman of the Union, Excellency President Jacob Zuma, our host, Excellency, fellow presidents and heads of government, Excellency Mr. Jane Ellison, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Chairperson of the AU Commission, Excellencies, Heads of Delegation, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Please permit me to join previous speakers in conveying my delegation's appreciation to our host, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, to his government and the brotherly people of South Africa for their own hospitality and for the excellent arrangements made for our comfort and for the success of our meetings. As this is my first address at this August Assembly, may I also congratulate His Excellency Dr. Robert Gabriel Mugabe, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, for his unanimous election as the chairman of our union. I feel highly honored and extremely pleased to be able to address you today, barely 2 weeks after my inauguration as the president following the 2015 presidential election in my country, Nigeria. That process, which was adjudged as the fairest and most credible in the history of elections in Nigeria, was midwifed by the dogged and sustained determination of the Nigerian people and their desire to deepen our democracy. Their quest was amply supported and even encouraged by the goodwill of our friends and partners in the international community. I therefore wish to seize this opportunity to convey my very deep appreciation to all those who contributed to the success of that election. My election has been described as historic. I agree that it is indeed historic, because for the first time in the practice of democracy in my country, an opposition party has defeated the ruling party in a keenly contested election. The election was also held against the backdrop of the fears and concerns expressed both in Nigeria and among our international friends abroad and partners that the outcome of the election could spell doom for Nigeria. I am glad that even though those fears and concerns were not without basis, the outcome was totally different, to the relief of all of us. I cannot fail to acknowledge the very positive role played by my predecessor, His Excellency Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, in averting the feared crisis and facilitating the peaceful transition of power between the two parties. I also wish to express my deep appreciation to all who honored us with their presence at my inauguration, and even those who, for unavoidable reasons, were unable to attend. I thank you all. Mr. Chairman, it is gratifying to note that our union has made laudable progress over the past 1.5 decades since its transformation from Organization of African Unity, OAU, to the African Union, AU. Notably, we have been able to redirect our priorities at the continental level from mainly political goals to more diverse aspirations that are equally fundamental to our survival and development in our global community. It is, however, clear, Mr. Chairman, that some of the greater challenges to our peoples within this union still lie in the political, economic, as well as peace and security spheres. Our continent is currently bedeviled by the evils of terrorism, insurgency, poverty, youth unemployment, and underdevelopment. Added to this, the destructive effects of the inhuman and criminal campaigns of the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria and neighboring countries, the Al-Shabaab attacks in East Africa, and the activities of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, all bear testimony to a continent under siege. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, and colleagues, on our part, I was indeed on my assumption of office that the best approach would be to work within the framework of the Lake Chad Basin Commission to mobilize collective support to fight against Boko Haram. I have, in this regard, directed the relocation of Nigeria's command center place it close to the theater of action. Furthermore, I have vigorously engaged the member states of the Lake Chad Basin Commission to better coordinate the strategies and tactics in fighting the insurgency in that region. I believe that this approach can be enhanced through complementary regional and continental efforts. The images in the international mass media of African youth getting drowned in the Mediterranean Sea on their illegal attempts, and oftentimes illusory hope of attaining better life in Europe, is not only an embarrassment to us as leaders, but dehumanizes our persons. Indeed, they combine to paint a very unfavorable picture of our peoples and the countries. Excuse me. Those of us gathered here today owe it as a duty to reverse this ugly trend. We must put an end to the so-called push factors that compel our young men and women to throw caution to the winds and risk life, limbs, and all on this dangerous adventure. We must redouble our efforts to sustain the economic development of our countries, ensure empowerment of our youth, create more jobs, improve and upgrade our infrastructure, and above all, continue the enthronement of a regime of democracy, good governance, and respect for human rights and rule of law. These and other measures that endanger peace and stability must be pursued relentlessly. In this connection, we must persist in our collective endeavor to work together through the African Union and our respective regional economic communities to uplift our continent and provide African peoples the enabling environment for the realization of their legitimate dreams and aspirations. At this juncture, let me assure you of the unflinching commitment of Nigeria to the ideals and aspirations of African Union, as explained in the Agenda 2063. This is geared towards ensuring a peaceful, prosperous, and integrated Africa in the next 50 years. It is for this reason that Nigeria is fully and irrevocably committed to the ECOWAS vision. We do so because we believe that African integration is best attained through the instrumentality of our regional economic communities as the building blocks of viable continental institutions. Nigeria will therefore continue to play her part in the supporting of the African Union Commission and other continental and regional institutions in their efforts to prioritize African development in all sectors of human endeavor. The journey might look arduous, but certainly not impossible. There are opportunities in every challenge. If and when we adopt this call for a change of attitude, approach, and disposition towards agreed protocols and commitments, we shall be bequeathing a politically stable, economically developed, and socially harmonious Africa, thereby justifying the confidence reposed in us by our electorates. We will also demonstrate our qualities as statesmen and true daughters and sons of Africa. I thank you for your attention.
Nous saluons également la présence de son Excellence M. Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, président de la République de Mozambique.
Sua Excelência Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Presidente da República do Zimbábue e Presidente em exercício da União Africana. Sua Excelência Chefes de Estado e do Governo, Sua Excelência Doutora Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Presidente da Comissão da União Africana, minhas senhoras e meus senhores. Gostaria de começar por manifestar em meu nome, e eu, Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, dos membros da delegação que me acompanha, e em meu próprio nome, o nosso agradecimento através da Sua Excelência, o Presidente Jacob Zuma, ao povo do Governo da República da África do Sul, pelo excelente acolhimento e hospitalidade que temos vindo a receber desde a nossa chegada a esta maravilhosa cidade de Joanesburgo. É para mim um momento gratificante dirigir-me pela primeira vez a esta magna Assembleia em representação de todo o povo moçambicano que em 15 de janeiro passado confiou-me a nobre missão de dirigir os seus destinos nos próximos 5 anos, na sequência das eleições de 15 de outubro de 2014. Fomos eleitos no quadro de legislação interna, que preconiza a realização de eleições em cada 5 anos, nos termos dos princípios e diretrizes da SADC sobre eleições democráticas, bem como na Carta Africana sobre a Democracia, Eleições e Governação. Minhas senhoras e meus senhores, quero partilhar convosco as linhas da minha governação, publicamente anunciadas no dia da minha investidura, neste novo ciclo. Vou chefiar um governo assente numa ótica que coloca a vida e a dignidade humana acima do lucro. Um programa que coloca a saúde e a educação de qualidade acima de um poder de consumo ilusório. Um governo que privilegia e promova o diálogo acima das disputas domésticas pelo poder. Uma governação que pensa nas gerações futuras. Queremos construir uma sociedade de inclusão e criar o bem-estar para o povo moçambicano, melhorando cada vez mais a qualidade da sua vida. Excelências, distintos convidados, o nosso continente é historicamente rico em recursos. Os dados estatísticos disponíveis revelam que 15% da população mundial habita o nosso continente e 25% da qual é jovem, bem como 25% de terra arável do planeta está em África. Com efeito, a África constitui a principal fonte global de importantes minérios e outro tipo de matérias-primas, que sustentam a economia mundial e a atual revolução tecnológica. Esta riqueza contrasta com o desempenho do nosso continente no comércio internacional, que se situa entre 2% e 3%, e com a produção agrícola, que contribui somente em 10% do volume mundial total. Assistimos também este contraste no nível da vida das populações, não obstante a riqueza que acima aludimos. Igualmente, registramos com angústia que o nosso continente continua a sofrer o drama de instabilidade. A realidade demonstra que 60% da agenda do Conselho de Segurança das Nações Unidas ocupa-se do debate de situações de conflitos no nosso continente. Este quadro negro não nos dignifica como um continente vasto, rico e determinado. Por isso, devemos agir com urgência e determinação para mudar este cenário negativo. O extremismo violento, a migração ilegal e as mudanças inconstitucionais de governo são alguns dos desafios que a nossa organização enfrenta. Estes desafios não são exclusivos a cada um dos nossos países ou a qualquer uma das nossas 5 regiões. A resolução destes problemas exige a nossa entrega e maior concentração e concertação dentro da região ou ao nível do continente. O discurso segundo o qual devemos encontrar soluções africanas para problemas africanos é uma manifestação clara sobre o que queremos e como desejamos conduzir o processo de integração e transformação econômica do nosso continente. Este é o espírito que manterá vivo o nosso engajamento ao pan-africanismo, sem significar a nossa autoexclusão. Devemos também, em conjunto, continuar a dar passos decisivos para garantir que o continente olhe para o futuro com optimismo, tal como reafirmamos uma África pacífica, integrada, unida e próspera. Excelência chefe de Estado e do Governo, nós saudamos o lema escolhido para esta 25ª Cimeira. 2015, ano de empoderamento da mulher e desenvolvimento, rumo à Agenda 2063 de África. Este lema nos permite refletir com a maior profundidade sobre o papel da mulher no aperfeiçoamento das nossas sociedades. Para o nosso governo, a mulher é o centro da atenção por estarmos conscientes de que empoderar a mulher é um dever de desenvolvimento. Queremos que em Moçambique a pobreza deixe de ter o rosto de uma mulher. Para terminar a nossa intervenção, nesta primeira oportunidade que nos é concedida, reafirmamos o nosso compromisso em relação aos princípios e objetivos desta organização continental, a União Africana, bem como a implementação da Agenda 2063, que estabelece o roteiro de desenvolvimento econômico e social de África. No contexto da nossa evolução, iremos promover com destacada prioridade a diplomacia econômica, criando um ambiente apropriado para as diferentes parcerias nesta área. Caros colegas, Moçambique está e continuará aberto para dar a sua contribuição para a total emancipação da nossa África. Caros colegas, mesmo em democracia, estamos a progredir. Líderes saem, líderes entram. É um bom exemplo e muito obrigado.
Nous saluons enfin la présence de Son Excellence M. Pakalita Mosisili, Premier ministre du Royaume de Lesotho.
Your Excellency, Dr. Robert Gabriel Mugabe, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency, Mr. Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa and our gracious host, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, allow me to acknowledge with a deep sense of humility the privilege accorded me to address this 25th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union as the newly elected Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to our host, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, for the warm welcome and hospitality, as well as excellent facilities extended to me and my delegation since our arrival in South Africa, Lesotho's closest neighbor and a country with which Lesotho enjoys inextricable ties because of our history, our culture, and our geography. As we often say in Lesotho, Lesotho is not only landlocked, she is South Africa locked. Chairperson, this generous gesture allocated to us to address the august assembly bears testimony to the resolve of our continental organization to encourage member states to stay resolute on the path of democracy and to applaud the triumph of constitutionalism and the rule of law in our individual countries. I've been democratically elected once more as Prime Minister of Lesotho, after serving more than 2 years as a member of the opposition in our National Assembly. Before that, I had been honored to serve for some years in the same capacity of Prime Minister of my country. I am humbled by the trust and heavy responsibility which the people of Lesotho have reposed in me to lead them through these turbulent times to peace, stability, and socio-economic development. This time around, I have been further heartened by the trust of 6 of Lesotho's political parties, which have formed a coalition government with the party I am privileged to lead. My coalition partners and I are painfully aware that Lesotho had been on the agenda of SADC for too long and for the wrong reasons. Consequently, the second coalition government is committed to a reform process that will affect various state institutions, including coming up with a new national constitution for Lesotho. We are therefore pleased to invite member states of the AU to remain seized with this reform program and to extend the requisite support where necessary. Chairperson, I'm aware that Lesotho, I beg your pardon, I'll read that again. I'm aware that I joined this assembly of heads of state and government at a trying but interesting time. 2 years ago, at the milestone of 50 years since the establishment of our organization, you resolved to shed the image of Africa as a continent of conflicts, instability, and economic stagnation. You decided to take a giant leap forward by implementing Agenda 2063 that will take us to the Africa we want. An Africa that is integrated, prosperous, and peaceful. Today, I stand here to pledge Lesotho's commitment to work with you in the pursuit of this lofty ideal. I do not underestimate the challenges and hurdles that still lie ahead of achieving the aspirations of our continent and her peoples. These problems range from foreign interference in domestic affairs, sporadic political unrest, terrorism, and radical extremism, to unemployment, marginalization of women, and mass migration that has led to thousands of African people dying in the Mediterranean Sea. These problems are exacerbated by the resistance of the big powers to reform the United Nations Security Council to render it more representative and accommodate the voice of Africa, among others. Talking about the UN Security Council reform, let me seize this opportunity to urge you, Your Excellencies, to stay the course, maintain the common Africa position articulated in the Ezulwini consensus. That position is right, it is reasonable, it is realistic. So let us not renege from it. The Americans say, if it ain't break, don't fix it. Agenda 2063 must succeed in achieving its objectives. But to succeed, it demands from us transformational leadership and strong political commitment. During this session, hopefully, we shall be adopting the implementation plan of Agenda 2063 for the next 10 years. The African people are excited about this initiative and expect from it implementation of priority programs and concrete projects that have been identified, including timeframes for the implementation of these projects, as well as strategies for mobilization of resources. This should go a long way in helping us shed the now common perception that the AU summit is no more than a grand talk shop. The theme of this 25th Ordinary Assembly of Heads of State and Government underscores a clear recognition that it is impossible to overcome our challenges and to achieve our continental goals without the empowerment of women, without their contribution, and without their full involvement in the political life and decision-making in their communities. It is highly symbolic that today we renew our commitment to the empowerment of women in the year that marks the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and its platform of action. This year also marks the midterm anniversary of the African Women Decade that started in 2010. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Africa has been able to overcome its challenges of yesteryears, namely colonialism and apartheid, through unity and collective action. With the necessary political will and determination, we shall also overcome the problems that today stand between us and the Africa we want. One of these is the remaining bastion of colonialism in Western Sahara, where the Sahrawi people are still denied their right to self-determination and independence. Africa is not free as long as the Sahrawi people still languish in colonialism. We must place new urgency on the political emancipation of Western Sahara. We are driven in that quest by the vision that was bequeathed to us by the great African leaders who came before us, such as Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, Nelson Mandela, Mzumkhele, and many others of their generation. We also draw our inspiration from our contemporary elders, the stalwarts of Africa's liberation, such as Dr. Robert Mugabe, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Sekitumile Masire, and others who, by the grace of God, are still with us today. Chairperson, I cannot conclude without paying a deserving tribute to the countries of our sub-region, SADC, for standing with Lesotho through a difficult time and for making sacrifices in order to help us conduct free and fair elections in February this year. I also wish to thank the African Union, our continental organization, for sending a team led by former Prime Minister of Kenya, Dr. Raila Odinga, to observe our elections. I know that our success is also your success. We thank you most heartily. Allow me once again to reaffirm the commitment of the new government of Lesotho to work closely with you and all member states of our continental organization in realizing the unity, solidarity, cohesion, cooperation, and development of our peoples. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, and as those wonderful boys and girls reminded us this afternoon in the African Union, let us make Africa the tree of life, our pride and our hope at the break of dawn. Let us give the best we have for Africa by defeating in our time the great challenges facing our peoples. I thank you. God bless Africa.
Nous avons aussi un chef d'État qui, durant sa mandature, a eu à présider aux destinées de notre organisation continentale. Il participe pour la dernière fois au sommet de l'Union africaine en tant que président de son pays. Il s'agit de son Excellence Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, président de la République unie de Tanzanie, que j'invite ici pour son discours d'adieu.
Well, let me apologize that I'll speak in one of the official languages of the AU, Kiswahili, but there is going to be translation. Mheshimiwa Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Zimbabwe na mwenyekiti wa Umoja wa Afrika. Mheshimiwa Jacob Zuma, Rais wa Afrika Kusini, mwenyeji wetu ambaye tunamshukuru sana kwa mapokezi mazuri na ukarimu wake. Waheshimiwa wakuu wa nchi na serikali, Mheshimiwa Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, mwenyekiti wa Kamisheni ya Umoja wa Afrika, waheshimiwa viongozi wa ngazi mbalimbali, waheshimiwa mawaziri, wageni waalikwa, mabibi na mabwana. I hope you are getting the translation. Not yet? Bado? Is it okay now? Thank you. Nakushukuru sana Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti kwa kunipa nafasi hii adhimu ya kusema maneno machache na kuwaaga waheshimiwa wakuu wa nchi na serikali wa nchi wanachama wa Umoja wa Afrika. Kuaga wenzako uliowazoea na kushirikiana nao vizuri kwa muda mrefu si jambo rahisi hata kidogo. Kwangu mimi hii ni siku yenye hisia mchanganyiko. Upande mmoja ni siku ya furaha kwamba nimeweza kupata bahati ya kuaga viongozi wenzangu na marafiki tuliofanya kazi nao kwa upendo na ushirikiano. Upande wa pili ni siku ya huzuni kwa sababu kuagana na watu uliowazoea na hata kufikia kuwa familia yangu katika medani ya kisiasa barani Afrika ni jambo gumu kwa mwanasiasa kama mimi. Nimekuwa sehemu ya familia hii kwa takriban miaka 20 sasa. Miaka 10 nikiwa waziri wa mambo ya nje na miaka 20 nikiwa rais wa nchi yangu. Nilichaguliwa kuwa rais wa nchi wa Tanzania kwa mara ya kwanza mwaka 2005 na mara ya pili mwaka 2010. Kwa mujibu wa katiba yetu, ifikapo Oktoba mwaka huu nitakuwa nimemaliza kipindi changu cha pili na cha mwisho. Uongozi wangu utakuwa umefikia ukomo, na baada ya uchaguzi utakaofanyika tarehe 25 Oktoba, Tanzania itapata rais mpya. Mimi nitajiunga na Watanzania wenzangu kujenga nchi yetu. Naisubiri siku hiyo kwa hamu. Nafurahi kwamba nami nashiriki katika kudumisha mila na desturi nzuri ya marais wa nchi yetu kuongoza kwa kipindi maalum, kisha kustaafu na mwingine kuchaguliwa kidemokrasia. Utaratibu huu ulioanza wakati wa rais wetu wa kwanza Mwalimu Julius Nyerere umeheshimiwa na rais wetu wa pili Mheshimiwa Ali Hassan Mwinyi na rais wetu wa tatu Mheshimiwa Benjamin William Mkapa. Mimi na udumishi. Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti, ndugu viongozi, leo ninapowaaga naona fahari kwamba katika kipindi cha miaka 10 iliyopita Tanzania imeendelea kuwa mwanachama mwaminifu na mtiifu wa Umoja wa Afrika. Tumeheshimu na kutekeleza misingi, malengo na madhumuni ya Umoja wa Afrika. Tumetekeleza kazi zote tulizopewa kufanya. Nawashukuru kwa heshima mlionipatia mimi na nchi yangu kushiriki na hata kuongoza baadhi ya shughuli za Umoja wa Afrika katika kipindi cha miaka 10 iliyopita. Nimewahi kuwa mwenyekiti wa Umoja wa Afrika mwaka 2008. Nimewahi kuwa mwenyekiti wa kamati ya wakuu wa nchi kuhusu mabadiliko ya tabia nchi KAHOSK 2012 mpaka 2014. Tanzania ni mjumbe wa kamati ya uongozi wa NEPAD. Tanzania ni mjumbe wa Baraza la Amani na Usalama la Afrika. Ninyi wenzangu ndio mnaojua zaidi kama tulitekeleza majukumu yetu kwa ufanisi kwa kiasi gani. Hata hivyo, napenda kuhakikishia kuwa tulifanya kila tuwezavyo kukidhi matarajio yenu na matarajio ya Umoja wa Afrika. Kama lipo jambo ambalo hatukulifanya vizuri, ninaomba radhi. Lakini napenda mjue kwamba haikuwa kwa makusudi, bali tulitatizwa na mambo yaliyokuwa nje ya uwezo wetu. Miongoni mwa mambo ambayo nitaendelea kuyakumbuka yataingia katika kumbukumbu za mchango wa Tanzania katika Umoja wa Afrika katika kipindi changu cha uongozi ni haya yafuatayo. Kwanza, kuanzishwa kwa ushirikiano wa kiuchumi baina ya Umoja wa Afrika na India na Uturuki. Pili, kuongoza operation ya kikosi cha kulinda amani cha Umoja wa Afrika kilichomuondoa muasi Kanali Mohamed Bakari kule Anjuan na kurejesha umoja wa taifa la Komoro. Tulisimama kidete. Tatu, kupinga kudhalilishwa kwa viongozi wa Afrika walioko madarakani na mahakama za nje hasa za Ulaya, universal jurisdiction. Tulishiriki katika kutafuta ufumbuzi wa migogoro iliyotokea Kenya na Ivory Coast. Katika kipindi chetu cha uongozi KAHOSK tumeweza kufanikisha bara letu la Afrika kuwa na climate change concept paper na kuwa na climate action plan. 6, tumepata fursa ya kuwa wenyeji wa mahakama ya watu na haki za binadamu ya Umoja wa Afrika. Pia ni wenyeji wa bodi ya ushauri dhidi ya rushwa ya Umoja wa Afrika. Pamoja na viongozi wenzangu wengine, tumeshiriki katika kuanzisha umoja wa viongozi wa Afrika wa kupambana na malaria, ALMA, na kuwa mwenyekiti wake wa kwanza. Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti, ninapoaga siku ya leo, nafarijika sana kuona kuwa Umoja wa Afrika unazidi kuimarika na bara letu la Afrika linazidi kusonga mbele kwa kasi kubwa katika kujiletea maendeleo ya kiuchumi na kijamii. Afrika ya leo sio ile ya miaka 10 iliyopita. Ukiacha nchi au maeneo machache katika nchi, baadhi ya nchi, hali ya amani na usalama barani Afrika ni ya kuridhisha. Demokrasia imezidi kuota mizizi na utawala bora unazidi kustawi. Vile vile mwelekeo ni
Well, the AU is actually quite angry, I'm told, the heads of state at these developments. First of all, they simply do not believe that it was even necessary, because from where they sit, you recall that the African Union has taken a stance which is to say no sitting head of state should appear before the ICC. They do state a whole host of reasons for taking their position, but it's a position that they have taken, and that is why, for example, the president of Kenya is no longer or is not going to appear before the ICC. But also, subsequent to that, the African Union has also taken a position to actually opt out of the ICC, as they are busy laying the foundation for what will be an African court, because they are emphatic about the point that they are not condoning human rights abuses. They do believe that the ICC, as it was originally intended, should actually continue and should do what it is supposed to do. However, they do feel that the way things have panned out, it has ended up being a kangaroo court, so to speak, for African leaders. And for that reason, they are no longer keen to participate. They believe that what is happening now, the outcome of which we will know tomorrow, is a bit of a smokescreen. And on the back of that, one doesn't even see, in fact, South Africa honoring whatever outcome that we may see tomorrow come that court decision. Well, we do not know yet what the ICC is going to say, but one would imagine that they would basically have wanted South Africa to hand President Bashir over so that he could appear before the court. But as I say, that is unlikely to happen. South Africa is unlikely. It's unlikely that South Africa will go against the continent, and the continent has indeed taken a decision that they are not going to cooperate with the ICC. They haven't said it in as many words, but if you read between the lines from what the people are saying here and what the next move of the African Union is going to be, nothing is going to happen to President Bashir.
Mapambano dhidi ya rushwa ambayo tunasemwa sana, lakini pia tuendeleze mapambano dhidi ya maovu katika jamii. Tuendelee kuimarisha demokrasia, utawala wa sheria na kulinda haki za binadamu. Tuendeleze bila kuchoka jitihada za kuzuia na kutatua migogoro barani Afrika. Inatupotezea muda mwingi wa kufanya mambo ya maana. Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti, kila ninaposoma agenda ya Umoja wa Afrika ya mwaka 2063, AU Agenda 2063, na mpango wa miaka 10 ya kwanza utekelezaji wa mpango huo, First 5-year Implementation Plan of the Agenda, nafarijika sana kuwa tunatambua changamoto zinazotukabili pamoja na fursa na uwezo wetu wa kuzipatia ufumbuzi. Naamini tukitekeleza kwa ukamilifu agenda ya AU ya mwaka 2063, ile ndoto yetu ya Afrika kuwa bara lenye umoja, na maendeleo ya juu itatimia. Mwisho, napenda kurudia kukushukuru kwa kunipa fursa hii ya kuagana na viongozi wenzangu, na washukuru wote kwa ushirikiano mlionipa katika kipindi chote nilichokuwa nanyi ndani ya Umoja wa Afrika. Naondoka nikiwa mwenye furaha kwamba Afrika ipo katika mikono salama. Mliobaki mnatosha kulitoa bara la Afrika hapa tulipo sasa na kwenda mbele kwenye neema tele. Mwisho kabisa, nawaomba mumpe mrithi wa nafasi yangu hapa atakapochaguliwa ushirikiano mkubwa kama mlionipa mimi, lakini naomba mumpe ushirikiano mkubwa zaidi. Ni matumaini yangu kwa Watanzania tutachagua kiongozi mzuri atakayeongoza vizuri nchi yetu, kiongozi ambaye ataendelea kutoa kipaumbele cha juu kwa masuala ya Afrika pamoja na wanachama na ushiriki wetu katika Umoja wa Afrika. Haya ni miongoni mwa misingi mikuu ya sera ya mambo ya nje ya Tanzania tangu uhuru, wakati kiongozi wetu wa kwanza Mwalimu Julius Nyerere mpaka sasa. Mimi naondoka, lakini Tanzania mlioizoea na kuijua itabaki. Mungu ibariki Afrika, Mungu ibariki Tanzania. Asanteni sana.
May I thank President Kikwete for that valedictory message he has given us. We wish him well in good health, well in a good environment, and well also as a member of the leadership of our country. But those who leave us are not going away. They will still be with us. And where we need their service, we shall certainly ask them to provide that service. So stay ready. Africa still needs you, and Africa will give you definitely a service when it has that service ready for you. So fare thee well, and we hope you will maintain your good health. God bless. That valedictory message we now declare the session of our assembly open and invite the chairperson is being invited, the chairperson of the AU Commission, to introduce the theme.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, I'll say very little. A warm welcome to the debate on the 2015 theme. All over the continent, the eyes of women and girls are on our deliberations, listening very keenly whether we are addressing their issues, and what we will do working with them. The events of the summit and the theme bring together our governments, AU organs, RECs, as well as civil society and women across the continent in line with the preamble of the Constitutive Act of the Union, which states that, I quote, "Guided by a common vision of a united and strong Africa, and by the need to build a partnership between governments and all segments of our civil society, in particular, women, youth, and the private sector, in order to strengthen solidarity and cohesion amongst our people. And also guided by the principle elaborated in the Act, which calls for participation of African peoples in the activities of the Union." So I just want to say, from a women's magazine, I thought I should just lift out something which says, "An African woman is the mother of the land and the people, the curator of culture and society. She plays the key role in the social welfare of all the people, especially the children who are the future." Having said that, we will start the theme debate by looking back at last year's theme, which was agriculture. And last year, after the discussion and consultations, the women said they don't want the handheld hoe anymore. So I just want to show a few pictures of how our women at the moment are working. That's the handheld hoe. Can you see how difficult it is to use that implement? From dawn to dusk, look at the women with their backs bent using that hoe. Look at them with the children on their backs, the one that our chair of the union was saying they carry all of us on their backs. There they are carrying women on the backs and using this hoe. And so for Agenda 2063 to mean anything to these women, we have to abide by the request to put the hoe into the museum and give them better technology. So we've decided as the AU Commission that we will symbolically launch this campaign by giving every country the most elementary of the tillers. We will show a picture of the different tillers. They can grow from this up to being almost like a tractor, but we'll give you the most basic one to take home. There's one for every country. In order to encourage all of you, governments, private sector, civil society, to assist women to get the tillers. And we'll be monitoring how each country is doing. So you can see there are different tillers. These ones you push, others you actually sit and drive like a tractor. There are different sizes. So we have 54 of them, but we couldn't bring all 54 here. There are somewhere we'll hand over to the delegations. But here we thought we will just bring 2, and we'll give one to the chair of the union, and we'll give the other one to the chair of NEPAD. And then from now on, we hope that governments and all our partners will be working with us. And where did we get these tillers? We got them as a donation from Poland, because we've been talking to our partners that we want to launch this campaign. And the ambassador of Poland in Addis said to us, okay, we'll partner you. We'll actually bring you the 54 tillers to start the campaign. So there we are. We would like the President of the Union and the President, Chair of NEPAD, to come forward to receive the tillers. And can we have the hoe? And we give them the hoe to put in the museum, and then we give them the tiller. So we are saying, here is a hole. We would like them to put it in the museum, but to replace it with tillers.
The old one. This is the modern one.
Okay.
This was the modern one, which improves.
And it goes to the museum.
Yes, with the bent.
Yeah.
And what you? Okay.
Let me keep it.
Oh. What we
Now this is for museum.
This is for the museum.
Oh, we send this to the museum.
Yeah.
But here,
Or you must have fuel.
you must have fuel.
And you're having to see whether I actually
And then we hope that more will come. We also hope that young people will be more attracted to agriculture, because it's clear that the young people will not use that hoe. But if we try and modernize, then they will be able to. So this is Agenda 2063. It's practical. For the next 10 years, we just want to remove that hoe. So every delegation must remember, before you leave, you will have one. Yours will still be packed, and this one will go back to be packed. When they are packed, they are not, they are easy to carry. So there is one for each delegation. There are 54 of them. They will show us. They will. Thank you very much. And now the theme discussion will start. I just wanted to do this before the start of the discussion. Thank you.
Well, it's time to, that's where we're going to leave it here on Channel 404. But do watch our news bulletins and our programs for updates on the Bashir matter, but also on other discussions that will be taking place a little later on. For now, it's a good night.
The road is open to all the delegations. Women empowerment. So this is just an example. Nous avons maintenant la table ronde sur le thème du sujet, Women Empowerment, l'autonomisation des femmes. Quand bien même nous n'ayons pas une table ronde, nous avons un débat rond sous la modération de son Excellence Dr Carlos Lopez, que je vais inviter ici, avec les panélistes.
Whilst we are waiting for the panel, I also wanted just to say, at the end of the theme discussion, there will be some awards given to countries for how well they are doing on the gender scorecard. So there is still something coming after the discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you all. As you can figure, we are quite late in our program. So we had prepared a roundtable about the theme with a certain structure that we are now going to modify to make it shorter, so you can all participate in good spirits and also with a lot of energy. Let me just mention as an introduction that the Lagos Plan of Action acknowledged the centrality of women in the development process. It had an entire chapter, chapter 12, devoted to women, and advocated for a greater female participation at higher administrative and policy-making levels, a reduction in the domestic burden of rural women, the support services needed for women workers, and a better health facilities for women and children, and more preschool daycare facilities. The plan failed, nevertheless, to address the structural gender inequalities that promotes women's lack of access to factors and means of production, such as land, labor, finance, credit, technology, markets, and other productive inputs. The Lagos Plan of Action was silent on the strengthening of social protection mechanisms and interventions, or reinforcement of social safety nets and services for vulnerable women and girls. It was, of course, silent on climate change and its disproportionate impact on women. And also, it failed to look into the economic implications of the current distribution of power. So what we are trying to do now with Agenda 2063 is to squarely address these shortcomings, but also put much more energy on implementation. In fulfilling the aspirations of Agenda 2063, we are calling for an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. This is a quote directly from the document. Now, if you look into Africa and its agenda of transformation, it's impossible for us to achieve it without integration of women in the centrality of the discussion. Although many gains have been made on gender equality and women's empowerment on some fronts since the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action in 1995, and other key legal and normative frameworks, a lot more needs to be done to bring about visible transformation in the lives of African women and girls. Let me just tell you this. If the current rate of progress continues unchanged, it will take Africa 81 years to achieve gender equality, overshooting Agenda 2063 by an additional 33 years. There is therefore a need to change the pace of transformative actions and forge new pathways to accelerate the achievements of gender equality and women's empowerment in all spheres of life by the target year of 2030 already. That's our aim. If Agenda 2063 is the vehicle that will bring about this transformative change for women and girls in Africa, it needs to be well steered. So to help steering already the discussion, we have a very powerful panel here, and we are counting on some lead discussants amongst your excellencies, the presidents. The panel is going to be introduced by me as I ask them to say a few words about each one of the various themes that we wanted to cover. And we are, for the benefit of time, going to be brief, but I will ask the panel to come back after the discussants have intervened. Therefore, it will make it a bit more interactive, and it will allow also the panel to react to some of the positions that are going to be presented, I'm sure, by our lead discussants. Let me start by introducing you Agnes Kalibata. Agnes is the president of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. She hails from Rwanda and has been Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources in her home country. And Agnes has been very much linked to a number of institutions relating to science in this area of agriculture. I think in Agnes we have not only an accomplished agricultural scientist, but also someone that knows very well how the politics work, and now is leading one of the institutions that is making an impact on the transformative discussion about agriculture in the continent. So Agnes, why don't you tell us something about the agriculture and the role of women in agriculture in Africa that we know is so key?
Thank you very much, Moderator. Excellencies, all protocols observed. Let me just say that in the last few years, in the last 10 years, the agricultural sector has been growing thanks to the investments you all have been making. This said, 80% of agriculture is still done by women. Women are disproportionately in agriculture, spending 70 to 80% of their time trying to get food. Now, women, though, own less than 15% of the land they are trying to farm, and this has huge implications in terms of the ability to invest, but also in terms of the ability to access credit. Let me just put on my political hat and go back to Rwanda a minute and let you know that in Rwanda, where women have been allowed to access land, there are laws that allow women to inherit land, but also to co-own land with husbands. 63% of women in Rwanda co-own land with their husbands. 24% of women in Rwanda actually own land. This has last year led to 35% of the agricultural loans going to women applicants. Now, compare this to 1% as a continental average. 1% of the women in agriculture accessing credit. Now, my president always talks about how supporting women is good for business. If we were supporting women in agriculture, who are 80% in agriculture, just think about what that would do to our GDP. If we were supporting women to reduce the 80% of the time they're spending in agriculture, just like you just did, Madam Chair, here, by giving us this example of a power tiller, and reduce the time only to 30%, just think about what that would do to the time that women spend with their families, but also with accessing new skills so that they can become more creative and more productive. Women spend 90% of their money in their families compared to 30 to 40% that men spend in their families. Think about what this would do to our economies. Think about what this would do to our families if women had much more money than they have today. So yes, supporting women is good for us as families, but it's also good for the business of this continent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Agnes. I'm now going to turn to Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Ngozi needs very little introduction, and in this type of gathering, probably no introduction, but I will do one nevertheless. Former Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy of Nigeria, with a long career in many international institutions, including Managing Director of the World Bank. Ngozi has been a voice in terms of not only transformation of the continent from
Nobody's playing with anything. Just a stone.
What are these people abangcolisa izinto? Huh? What are these people who are playing these things loudly? Huh?
That's it.
But it sounds like it's here. You sure?
They said 1 minute, 1 minute.
Yeah? Yeah?
PDC was the
PDC. Enkosi kakhulu Phelisiwe. Well, sithetha nje kuphele izipitshi ebezinikezelwa zinkokheli zamazwe ngamazwe, ingakumbi ke umongameli ophethe ilizwekazi jikelele, umongameli uRobert Mugabe. Kwathi emva koko kwathetha ezinye inkokheli nezifikayo kuba ke zisanda bekwa ngokusesikweni na njengeenkokheli zamazwe awo. Singabandakanya phakathi kwazo umongameli waseNigeria, inkulumbuso yaseLesotho kwakunye nezinye. Kodwa ke obechophele umcimbi Gqirha uNkosazana Dlamini Zuma nguye ke ngoku obethe thaca phakathi kwezinkokheli izinto ngezinto ezinkokheli ekufuneka zizixoxile ngobusuku banamhlanje. Phakathi kwezo zinto ezizawuxoxwa ngobusuku banamhlanje ngumba waseBurundi kokubana ziyavumelana na ezinkokheli zeli lizwekazi nombono kaPresident waseBurundi uPierre Nkurunziza nofuna ukungenela ukhetho ityeli lesithathu. Ukuba ke sithatha amazwi athethwe ngumongameli waseZimbabwe nokwangusihlalo nokwangumongameli we-African Union umongameli uRobert Mugabe, ingathi ezinkokheli zizakhe ziwuchophele lo mcimbi. Ngokokutsho kamongameli uMugabe, akufuneki sizithathele ingxaki kweli lizwekazi nalapho kungekho zingxaki ebekumelwe ukubana zikhona. Watsho esithi akawuboni kakuhle lo mcimbi wale third term ufunwa yile ndedeba, kodwa ke akatsho okokubana eso sisigqibo seenkokheli zeAfrika lonke. So ngumcimbi ke lowo esicinga intobana uzawushukuxwa ngale njikalanga, zitsho ke ezinkokheli mhlambi kwithuba seyure ezimbalwa ezizayo kwanye ngomso kusasa okokubana zigqibe kwelithini na. Zizawuphinda ke ezinkokheli zishukuxe nomnye umcimbi okokubana kula Security Council nalapho kukho lamazwe mahlanu angawo atshilayo naphetheyo, o-America, no-France, no-Russia, athi ilizwekazi laseAfrika lizawungena njani nalona. Uzawushukuxwa ke nalo umcimbi ngokuhlwa nje. Nayiyo ke imicimbi phakathi kwemicimbi emininzi ezawushukuxwa ngale njikalanga ezawuxoxwa wona kwisithuba seyure ezizayo.
Deeply honored I am to have been invited to join you here and this eminent panel. Thank you. I hope I'm not too foreign to my sisters and brothers here in Johannesburg. I would have liked to say something about the fact that all women have been little girls. And unfortunately, too many girls today face a rather brutal reality. They are denied education, sufficient health care and protection because they are girls. And I believe that how a society protects its children and enables them to use their full potential, how a society views its girls and boys is the starting point. And it is from that baseline that a society builds its future. And education is key. This is as true for Sweden as it is for you. I was asked to say something about a Swedish experience, a Nordic experience, and I would mention 4 points that are of general relevance when we talk about advancing gender equality. They are about representation, the prevention of violence against women, because as much as we talk about valuing women, so many women die from violence, domestic violence or sexual violence, and are targeted from violence around the world today. It is a matter of equal pay for equal work and shared responsibility for childcare. I would say that the Nordic experience, in short, including strong trade unions, a common view of the importance of economic growth and the need of a welfare state, has fostered gender equality and vice versa. And gender equality has contributed to economic growth, social inclusion, high employment, and high fertility rates. And the 3 reforms that I would mention that we undertook in Sweden historically were very important. The first reform involved the abolition of the joint taxation system. And this reform meant that spouses were taxed individually and not jointly. The second reform involved expansion of high-quality universal childcare provision. And this was at the time when Olof Palme was Prime Minister of Sweden in the 70s. And the third reform involved changes to the social security system. Individual parental insurance replaced by what was previously a maternity insurance. So a shared responsibility for the family and children as well. And this meant that women could also enter the labor force, the labor market. So these are just a few examples of what this means. And today, I think that in order to build peace, security, and stable societies, it is a simple fact that we have to include both women and men in the efforts. And congratulations to the African Union to have declared this year, 2015, as the year of women's empowerment, a very important step in the right direction.
Thank you, Margot. And now I turn to our last panelist, Atalaya Molokome. Atalaya is the current Attorney General of Botswana, and in fact, she is the first female Attorney General of her country, a widely respected scholar with all the titles on the academic field that you can get in law, and also very active in the networks dedicated to law, founding member of the Women and Law Society in Southern Africa, and also Women in Law and Development International. She has attended many committees and different bodies that are dedicated to these issues. And of course, has a very strong opinion about the role that women should have on the legal field. In fact, we wanted to open it up a bit, and I asked Atalaya to maybe tell us more about women's rights and how the way we perceive rights has to also evolve, to include from the assets to the participation in different types of activities. The legal frameworks have a very important role to play. Atalaya, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we originally had 5 minutes. So I had, like Ngozi, 5 points in 5 minutes. I think we now have 2. My math doesn't serve me very well, but I'll try and cut the 1 minute to some seconds. First of all, Carlos, I agree with you. We have had a record, a clear record in terms of standard setting by the international community, by the regional groupings such as the AU. We have the CEDAW and its optional protocol. We have the African Convention on Human and People's Rights and its protocol on the rights of women, the Maputo Protocol. We have, of course, the SADC Gender Protocol, and I'm sure other regional economic groupings have their own instruments that guarantee the right to gender equality. We said in 1991, of course, in Vienna, that gender equality is a human right, and women's rights are human rights. I think many countries, Excellencies, have actually come to the party. Many countries have constitutions that guarantee gender equality. Many of our countries have legislation that decrees that women and men are equal before the law. And I must say these 3 to 4 decades of standard setting at the international, regional, and the national level have been 4 good decades. And I must congratulate their Excellencies of the African Union for signing up to many of these. But what has been the performance? What have we achieved? What is our record? If you select the areas of leadership and governance, I did assure Carlos that I would look at not just the legal rights, but also issues of decision making. The concept paper notes correctly, the AU concept paper, that Africa is the only continent to double its women's political participation within 1 decade. In fact, I was just double checking in here, 5 African countries are among the top 20 of 142 in the world with respect to women MPs. Rwanda, number 1, at 63.8%, Senegal, number 7, at 42.7%, South Africa, number 10, at 41.5%, Mozambique, number 13, at 39.6%, Angola, number 19, at 36.8%. This is a record of which, as Africans, we can be proud. Regarding other levels of decision making, we know, Madam Chairperson of the Commission, that you have been a trailblazer at the regional level and that there is gender parity among your commissioners. So we'd like to congratulate you for that. In Kenya, talking about the judiciary, 37% of judicial officers are women, including in the highest courts, in the Supreme Court of Kenya. In my own country, Botswana, 43% of our senior executive positions in government are women. And I've met many diplomats who say that they have not, in any country, including the so-called developed countries, met the same number of women at such high levels and worked with such high-level women as they have in my country. We have 43% of permanent secretaries, including myself, the Attorney General, the Governor of the Central Bank, Ngozi, and many of you know, Lina Mohotlo, are women. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that with our 62.5% of all magistrates in Botswana being female,
Justice has a female face, and I think it makes a difference when justice has a female face for access to justice for women. But what have been the challenges? There are many, and they are surmountable. We have persistent, dominant norms, values, and practices that undermine gender equality. Carlos, you've mentioned that. All this is legitimized and entrenched by dual legal systems where customary law coexists with the written state law. So the Constitution will say women and men are equal. And this is without exception in almost all our countries. But they will also guarantee the right to culture. And what will then happen is that in an attempt to assert their rights, women come against traditional laws that are recognized by the Constitution, although the Constitution is meant to be superior to those pieces of legislation. The result, of course, is that gender equality issues are relegated to traditional and customary authorities. There are serious gaps between constitutional and legal enactments that guarantee equality on the one hand and practice on the ground. We have very weak enforcement mechanisms in many of our countries and institutions to deliver access to rights, land, productive resources, credit in particular. Ngozi has spoken about that. And there are, of course, persistent and equal power relations between women and men in all spheres of our lives. So what can we do? And I want to complete my intervention with the actions or the interventions we can undertake in this regard. Clearly, we need to close the gaps between the commitments, formal equality on the one hand, and practical delivery on the ground. How do we do that? We must begin with the dual legal system. We must close the gaps there. We must analyze our customary and religious laws for compliance with constitutional and human rights provisions. As the AU chairperson, I'm told, said yesterday, and I hope I'm quoting you correctly, Madam Chairperson, we must discard the bad practices that are in our customary laws, customary or not. We must protect and keep, and I want to add, codify or enact into law the good ones for adoption. We must harmonize our systems into a new empowering dispensation that will become the new culture, so that when we talk about culture, we are talking about something positive and empowering. And we must strengthen our institutions for justice delivery at all levels, whether it's in the courts, legal aid institutions, and information centers. And finally, disseminate laws and rights to both women and men in the community and all political, legal, and judicial institutions, parallel to an intensive gender awareness program that shows the importance of gender equality as a human right. Our heads of state, ladies and gentlemen, are very well placed to play a leadership role in this regard as champions of gender equality, and I'm personally encouraged at the sense of urgency shown at the summit, especially by the chairperson of the AU, His Excellency, Mr. Robert Mugabe, who set the tone so well earlier this afternoon. I'm equally encouraged by the farewell remarks of His Excellency, Mr. Jakaya Kikwete of Tanzania, who leaves a trail of achievements, I believe, in this regard. I therefore have every reason to be hopeful after hearing the commitment made by our incoming leaders. And we, the women of Africa, I believe, are ready to share in the future that I'm sure is going to be bright of our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We definitely are encouraged by all the statements, and I agree with you. If we are not ready, we at least didn't hear the hesitation. It seems that everybody's ready, and that's why it's my pleasure now to turn to our leaders and have the confirmation of that readiness that I'm sure will come. Of course, this panel did not cover all the fields that are important in this debate. That includes the issues of education, the issues of health, the issues of science and technology, certainly the importance of ICT, because ICT has become one of the ways women can leapfrog some of the shortcomings that exist in the current structures. So we have a plethora of dimensions, because this is a cross-cutting theme. Unfortunately, we have no time to cover all of them, but at least we got a gist from the panel. And now it's my pleasure really to invite first our lead discussants, 4 leaders that are going to give us the tone. And then I will be very happy to open the floor to all the heads of delegation that would like to take it. Let me start by inviting President Uhuru Kenyatta, President Kenyatta, you have been an inspiration also in your commitment to the youth and the role of youth. And in all documents of Agenda 2063, there is a lot of emphasis on these both youth and women roles that are going to be important because we have disenfranchised these two categories of people for a long time. And if we are really going to leapfrog and become the masters of our own destiny, we'll have to integrate them fully and make them central to our transformation processes. And I'm sure in your intervention you will highlight us along these lines. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me begin by saying that we in Kenya join other member states in appreciating 2015 as the African Union Year of Women's Empowerment and indeed development towards our own Africa's agenda for 2063. Let me say that Kenya and indeed our region remain completely committed to gender equity and to women's empowerment. And indeed, in Kenya, this is clearly evident in our progressive constitution and indeed also in our Vision 2030. Beyond this, our government's agenda for women is premised on a very clear conviction that empowering women is key to the development of our own nation. To achieve this, I think the first thing that we have done is understand